to Beginning Skills within the Loop. Today I brought in a novelty item, which is a needle. Previously I've talked about different materials that needles are made out of. They can be made out of plastic, aluminum, wood, bone. They can be made out of different other types of metals, and they can be made out of perhaps a metal that is coated with a nickel plate, which makes them very smooth, and stitches can move very quickly across them. Today I brought in another kind of plastic needle, and these are special because of this little end. These are called knit lights instead of night lights. So if we take a closer look at them, we can see why they are so fantastic. They can come in, I think it's a different color for every size. This is size 8 or 5 millimeter, and it says right on the little barrel at the end. And that is the standard size you use for worsted weight yarn. The ends are a clear tipped plastic. Both ends have these slightly larger barrels on them. They have the name, they have the size, and they have a little on-off button. That's right. These are battery-operated needles, but they're not something you would find in Harry Potter. This isn't what Mrs. Weasley used, where she would turn something and make things knit. But you turn each barrel, 1, 2, and we've got little glowing lights at the tip here. This is something then that you can use, say, when you're knitting at the movie theater, which is something that I do, it's true. First of all, when you're knitting at a movie theater, I would recommend not using metal, because metal tips click. And maybe the person next to you, when Spider-Man's sweeping down from somewhere, they don't want to hear click, 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 click. But instead, believe me, in the past too, I've found out you don't want to wear the little minor lighted cap that you're focusing down into your lap, even though the modern movie theaters are so kind as to have yarn holders on either side of you. Instead, you can use knit lights with the knitted tips of the yarn needles, or the knitting needles. It's a very soft light, and you can go ahead and work on your project and not bother anybody else with a light source. It could be just at home watching something, and everyone prefers to have the lights off for a movie. But this gives just enough light on the tip so that you can see your knits and purls are correct. The only negative side, and I feel I do need to point this out, is that I think it's the little circle batteries are in here, 2 or 3 of them, and because of that, the ends are weighted just a wee bit, and it can be uncomfortable unless you have a nice weighted project on the front of the needles. If you're only working on something very small, it does feel a little bit odd to have those wiggling. But I wanted to show you guys something funny, something actually useful, and something that might be a great stocking stuffer for that person who is everything. My understanding is that they do have these in crochet hooks as well, so you can crochet quietly in the dark, getting something done while all of the people around you are just wasting time watching movies. Thanks for joining me on this session. I'm an original, someone who I have to be. I'm an original. Welcome to In the Loop with Laura. Today on our Friends segment, we have Julie Bolgery back. Thank you for coming, Julie.
Thank you.
Julie has a Etsy store and a Facebook page, all in accordance with her title, the ScarletThread Quilt Company. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us now what you have been doing and what you've got in store for you this fall?
Sure. I have been a long arm quilter in a business capacity for other people for about 6 years now. And a couple of years ago, we started carrying fabric, which I sell via the Etsy store, which is an online setup similar to eBay, but Etsy is strictly for handmade goods or supplies to make handmade items. So I've been doing that, and we are just about ready to announce that we're going to have a grand opening of a brick and mortar storefront here in Fulton County. Hopefully around Christmas or New Year's, we'll be ready to do that.
That's very exciting for those in the crafting community.
Yes.
So you have already been in business. This isn't going to be a new huge venture, except for the fact that it is brick and mortar.
Yes.
And you have said that it is near Green Oak. Is that correct? Or it's east of Caston High School. Can you tell us the address and the street?
Well, the actual address is 1974 East, 1000 South, and it's a 12-mile address.
Okay.
Because we're going to be on the Cass and Fulton County line. So, of course, the house is in Fulton County and the mailbox is in Cass County.
Oh, no.
But we're right on the county line just east of Caston High School. So if you go down 25 to Caston and turn left, if you go about 4 miles, you'll run right into us. But then it's also real easy to jog over to 31 and, like you said, visit Green Oak or some of the other attractions in the area.
Wonderful. And it's going to be a Scarlet house?
Well, hopefully next spring the house will be painted probably bright red. At this point it's getting a little late to probably do much outdoor painting, especially with the crops being harvested and all of the grain flying.
Lots of fall activity inside and out. And in your storefront you will offer fabric, and what other things will you have?
We're going to be a full-service quilt shop, so we'll have the fabrics and the notions and the patterns, in addition to the long-arm quilting services. So if you want to make a quilt, or if you don't want to make one and just want to purchase it, we'll be full service, and you can start your quilt and finish your quilt with us.
And right now you have all the fabrics that you have through your dining room that you sell online.
Yes.
And what are some of those lines? What are some of the things that if someone could walk in that they might expect to see?
Sure. We carry yardage from lots of different manufacturers. We do carry Moda and a little bit of Robert Kaufman and Riley Blake, Westminster. We have the new division of RJR called Cotton and Steel. That's very exciting. We also have some Wyndham. Quilting treasures. We carry a really large variety, in addition to a full line of pre-cuts. If you're a quilter, you'll know what pre-cuts means. We have the fat quarters, the charm packs, the jelly rolls, and then we also carry some other fabrics. We carry minky, and we have some flannel and wide backs for quilting, as well as we've just started getting into a little bit of cotton sateen, which is a little bit of a heavier weight fabric that can use for home decorating or other crafting projects.
And then in terms of the batting you have, is it prepackaged? Is it a roll that you can buy a certain amount of, or is that? Currently
we carry Hobbs batting off the roll, and that's another thing that we are looking forward to having the space to expand into. There's another company called Quilter's Dream that's a really lovely product that we hope to carry as soon as we get the doors open.
And so is the Hobbs both 80-20 polyester cotton, or is it polyester, or do you have a
80-20 means that it's 80% cotton and 20% polyester, and if you're familiar with like a Warm and Natural that you can pick up in a lot of stores, it's very similar to that.
Okay.
And I carry it on the 96-inch roll.
And that's normally what you use then when you do a long arm if someone does not supply their own batting?
Correct.
Okay. Wow, that's a lot.
Yes.
And I do want people to rush out and go to her store, but only when it's open. So I want to be very clear. As of filming, it's not open. Do you have a tentative opening date, or should people keep their eye open?
Definitely keep your eye open. At this point, we're really hoping to be able to open by January 1st.
2015.
Correct.
January 1st, 2015. So please write that on your calendar. It'd be an exciting thing to go to.
Yes, we're very excited.
Yeah. Well, before we step into looking at this quilt closer, I do have a couple other questions, and that would be, you have been operating in the Etsy scene and operating with a lot of modern quilts, modern patterns, and do you see that you're going to continue in that, or do you see that Fulton County, that you're going to offer a little bit something different in the brick and mortar?
In the brick and mortar, we're looking forward to being able to expand the look of all the fabrics we carry. Currently, we carry a lot of brighter colors. Perhaps they might be described as more modern prints, because that is what has sold well for us online. But we know that a lot of our friends and quilters in the area still prefer a more I would call it like a fall palette. The browns and the creams.
A little bit more subdued.
A little bit more traditional. And we hope to carry, we do plan to carry those kinds of fabrics as well. So we hope to offer a large variety so that we can appeal to a lot of different customers.
And I would imagine if you are in the area and you become a customer of Julie, that she will listen to your quilting desires and needs, and if you have ideas, things you see in magazines.
We're very excited to find out what you're looking for and to be able to provide that for you and work with you and get to know you.
Do you know yet what magazines and books or patterns you might carry?
We have a few patterns and books now. I have several by a company called Thimble Blossoms, Cluck Cluck Sew. I actually have a few patterns of my own that I designed a few years ago, so we'll carry those.
Let's pull some of those up.
Sure.
And we can see the Scarlet Thread. Can you tell us about some of these chasing
Sure.
windmill?
Chasing windmills has been one of our most popular patterns because of the optical illusion it kind of gives. It's actually a very easy piecing project. It is simply squares, and then you see here how you've got a square, and you just put a square on top of a square and stitch across, flip it over, and cut off. And then you sew your squares together. It's actually very easy.
This is why we buy the pattern, because with that description, I'm not running home and doing it, but the pattern is right here in my hand.
That's right.
By Julie Baldry, right
Yes,
there. That's
yes.
wonderful. 3 tangerines, that's adorable.
This one was really fun and easy to put together because this one actually uses those layer cakes that we've talked about, the pre-cuts. These squares across here are pre-cut 10-inch squares. We're just going to sew together in strips, and then we pick a coordinating fabric to make our solid strip. And then if you're comfortable, or if you have never done applique, these 3 circles are appliqued. They're not needle turn. They're using a fusible, so you'll just fuse those down, and then you don't even have to do anything else to them. If you take it to your long arm quilter, she can quilt those down for you so that they're secure.
Oh, how interesting. I never thought of that.
Yeah.
But that's a great way to foray into the wide, wide world of applique.
Yes.
It's not frightening. And then is this a rickrack?
It is. That was added before quilting, and your quilter can just quilt right on around that, or you could add it afterwards. It's kind of whatever suits your fancy.
And that's the fun thing about quilts, is you make them your own when you interchange the fabrics or decide it's not going to be 3 tangerines, it's going to be 3 lemons.
Well, and I have a customer who bought that, and she did XOXO for Kiss Hug, and used Valentine fabrics.
Yeah, exactly. That's the wonderful thing about making it your own. Here's a third one, Pink Twist. That looks complicated, is it? Is it, Julie?
It's actually not. You could. It is it's squares and half square triangles. Just put together in a different ways to give it a new and fresh look.
And again, you could do that in any colors that you have. And here's a Charming Baby Quilt, is the title of it.
And the charming comes from the outer border is actually charm squares that have been cut down to make 4 patches, and the middle is 1 large piece of fabric. So again, the patterns that I have typically designed are quick and easy at this point.
Yep, and we'll see if you ever get the time to design more. But
Exactly.
I know that way leads on to way, and you might just do that.
That's right.
And here's a Charming 9 patch. I assume that's the same, that these are from a charm pack.
Yes, exactly.
And so because you buy them in a charm pack, they're already color coordinated. But if you want to use your own fabrics at home that you already own,
Yes.
you go for it.
Yep, it gives you yardage requirements. If you wanted to use fat quarters that you might have had in your stash, then you can cut those 5-inch squares yourself.
And it's nice that you have an alternate
Yes, and this
color.
one's just a little bit smaller.
Yep. And that would be like a baby quilt, and this is a lap or a wall hanging and a baby quilt.
Yeah.
And then the last one that she brought in today is a pinwheel fun in brights. What can you tell us about this one?
Well, this one I designed because I had picked up this really cute farm fabric for my son when he was little and wanted to make something that coordinated with it. So these are just simple pinwheels with some borders and a larger pinwheel for the corner squares. And then this one shows here more maybe a girl colorway. It's got some bird cages and some pinks and aquas.
And it's shrunk down a little bit. It's hard to see the pinwheels on the screen, but they are the same thing.
Yep.
Well, that is impressive that you were able to put together the patterns on a computer, which you say you're not tech savvy.
And I'm not, but I did figure it out. The printer wasn't real impressed with the program that I used, but it does work.
Well, that's wonderful.
Yeah,
Very
thank
creative. And I wanted to bring up some fabrics as well before we look at this.
Sure.
These are fabrics that I requested because a local lady designed them.
Yes. There is an artist in Rochester, and she's wonderfully talented, and she licenses her artwork to a company called Quilting Treasures. And then I sell some of her fabrics and look forward to selling even more when we get the store open. But this line is a lot of fun because it's fall colors, and obviously you can tell it features sunflowers. So as a quilter, you know you want lots of large prints along with small prints and tone on tones, and this line kind of covers them all. I don't know if I'm showing them very well here. I'll let you arrange them, but
It's always a trick with quilting. So I wanted to highlight these just because Julie is a local lady who's starting her own business, and Angie is a local lady who is a designer, and I think it's fantastic that all these things have come together on my little show in the Loop.
it's exciting.
And I know there's so many quilters out there who all go to other places and get quilting souvenir fabric.
Yes.
Because it's fun.
Yes.
And why not get something that's local, or tell your friends about it and make a quilt out of this? It would even be wonderful to have some sort of contest.
Oh, that's a very good. We'll have to think about that
to
some
make
more.
a local quilt.
Yes. Well, it's always exciting when you have a real connection to the designer of the fabric. It's, there's lots and lots and lots of designers out there, but to have one locally that you can know and meet and talk to, it's exciting.
And I am asking Angie to come on, and she's a bit shy, so we'll see.
Okay, we'll keep working on her.
Okay. But I know that I have gone to, I remember in Utah, and went into a store, and you don't want to necessarily buy, if you're in another city, something that everybody else has. And I've asked, well, what do you have? And they had a local artist as well who had designed. And I certainly do that with yarn. I go in, is there a local dyer? Is there a local spinner? And so here again are some of these things that
these
Angie
lovely
has
fabrics.
made. And I would be very interested in seeing some sort of finished product from them. The last thing that you have brought in for us to see in regards, just to highlight something that will be in your store, is another example of your long arm machine. And we have had you on previously. We've talked about your long arm machine in your Etsy store. This is a quilt that you brought in that you're particularly proud of. What can you tell us about this?
Well, this is a quilt that I recently quilted. This quilt actually belongs to Mary Baker of Mary Stitch and Knit in Fulton.
And many of you know her.
Yes, and she's still very much open and making quilts. And she is very kind and lets me do some of the quilting for the quilts in her store. And this one I finished recently, and I'm particularly pleased with it. It's a black and white quilt, and in the black negative space, I quilted a different design in each square. So I just brought this so we could look at some of the different things that you can have done.
And I'm reminded before we go on, you have also taken over, Mary is still doing quilting, but you've taken over the tux business, correct?
Yes, yeah.
And that's something that is of interest in the county for
Right.
weddings and for proms and such.
Definitely.
That Julie has the tux business.
Yes.
Contact her. So let's take a close-up of some of these black squares when you talked about the negative space. And just to highlight again to people, you do not have a programmable machine.
No, I don't.
This is all stuff that she did just with her eye, and
This, I will admit, on this block, I did use a ruler.
I can understand why.
So, yes, straight lines like this without a ruler are not going to happen.
Not for me.
So.
But it's fun that it's a block and it comes down to a triangle, so the borders come down. And let's move it over to this one.
Okay. This is just more of an organic feather design. And if you're a quilter or, hope to be one someday, one of the ways to work on this particular block and make it come out nice is to use what's called registration points. So in this block, there are seam lines that run from here to here, and that's what I use visually to keep myself the spacing right. So I'll come out up to this one and back down, and then do this loop and then do another one, and then I'll keep it inside this particular triangle, always coming back to the center and then going on to the next one.
It's beautiful, very even.
Thank you.
Let's go to, I don't know, the sun rays. That's fun.
This one was a lot of fun because you don't have to be straight. You start in your corner and you just wiggle your way out to the end and backtrack and go down to the next one.
Oh, you did? You backtracked
Yeah, we
outside
just
the
backtracked.
black.
Yep.
Very nice. And this is something I think a number of people could do on your home machine.
Definitely.
Doesn't need a long arm for that. Let's go to the wavy square. Oh, well, might as well. I'm going to all the geometric. Here's another.
Yep. And this again, just using your center as a focal point and come out and make your loops and come back down.
I don't know if you'd call that. I don't know. Do these all have names?
I'm sure they do in somebody's book, but I don't know what they all are.
And here's a wavy line, and you can see she would come out
Yes, did backtrack.
and then backtrack around.
Yep, so you just do all of one direction and you start and come back from the other direction. That's a lot of fun. And then I don't know if maybe we could point out the border real quick, because I think that turned out pretty well as well. If you can get all of one of them in there.
We can turn it sideways.
Turn it the other
if you
way.
care.
Yeah. So this was just a fun, since the fabrics in this particular quilt were black and white and red and they were kind of bold and geographic, I thought that the quilting should also kind of match the feel of the quilt. And that's something that when you have something quilted you want to work on, is trying to make the look of the quilting
even within
match
the red.
the feel of the quilt as well. So.
And in the white, which is difficult. Oh, there we can see a little bit.
Yeah, you can see
We've
it.
got the leaning leaves that touch each other at the corners. There's a lot going on in this. And Mary, this is for Mary.
This does belong to Mary Baker, and she very generously let me borrow it this morning. I'm going to take it right back to her, because quilters know that you become very attached to their quilts.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
especially when it's been made into a beautiful work of art.
Thank you.
Well, I would advise all of you again to keep your eye open and your ear open for the ScarletThread Quilt Company. Perhaps the January 1 opening, but you'll hear some rumbles in the area before then.
I'm sure.
And Julie and her family are working very hard now. You have the building.
We do have the building. Now we're working on construction.
Getting it into shape for being open.
Yes.
And quilt fabric, quilt notions, long arm machine service.
And if you just want to come visit and see what we have, we'd love to get to know you.
Well, thank you again for coming, Julie.
Thank you for having me.
Glad to have you in the area.
Thanks.
I'm an original, someone who I have to be. To say that it's overrated.
Welcome to the book corner of In the Loop. Today I've got two books that were written by Jane Waller and Susan Crawford, and they are a bit of vintage. This is called A Stitch in Time, Vintage Knitting and Crochet Patterns from 1920 to 1949. This is beautiful, first of all, beautiful cover. These are patterns that these two ladies in England have taken vintage patterns and they have reknit them with modern yarn, and they have rewritten the patterns so that they are accessible for people of many different sizings. And they're gorgeous. Here's using some crochet at the bottom of this one. So here's an example. This was the original pattern. It was 2 pennies in England. This is what it looks like. And when you get the original patterns that are vintage, they will call for a yarn that's no longer in stock. They use needle sizing that is hard to decipher. Here are the original instructions. And they will have no sizing. It will have one size. So they have been very faithful and worked very hard to make this, and they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different sizings now available. They give you actual needle sizes that you can obtain in a store. They use yarn that is found online or in stores and easy to get a hold of. And then they have rewritten the instructions. Here's 1 page, 2 pages, 2 pages for that one. And then they have the modern examples of what this looks like. So if you enjoy dressing vintage, that you want to have a modern fiber, or you want to have a color that looks particularly good on you. This is a silk. It's just gorgeous. Have different, especially the shoulders seem to really differ. Puffy. If you want to dress for a vintage era theater, all of these things are excellent for that. So check this out. Again, this is for my personal library, but the local library will interlibrary loan anything for you. And then I have their second book. It's also called A Stitch in Time, Volume 2. It's from 1930 to 1959 instead of 1920. It goes 10 years, and it's just more of the same. They talk about, this is the 1930s, what makes each era unique, and then they do remakes of some pretty fun and funky styling. It's not just our modern times that have unique styles, but people have been creative through all the years, and here's a beautiful example of a blown out cable. Beautiful. So check these out. A Stitch in Time by Susan Crawford and Jane Waller. Both as well are on Facebook, and they're on Twitter, and one of them goes by Just Call Me Ruby. So look them up on that and expand some of your knitting into vintage era items. Thanks so much for coming.
someone who I have to be.
And
To
just
say
the
that it's overrated. Crochet fashion thing as a
Stop it, Hannah!
it's complicated. Doesn't mean my grandma sweater won't last. Look at me, look at you. Since
I'm
then,
what?
I'm complicated.
Chris has a picture of me with a little minor light yarn holders.
I was
That was
knitted
it.
together like a cable knit sweater. Before my life
All right.
began,
As we work, Chris.
I had a plan.
This is Laura Ricketts, and you're watching RTC Channel 4.